The Boston Bruins outlast the Toronto Maple Leafs in a Game 7 overtime. The New York Rangers get the jump on the Carolina Hurricanes. And the San Jose Sharks look forward to the draft lottery coming up this week. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go, the fast-paced game that lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. My pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Boston Bruins, Ian McLaren. And Ian, have you exhaled yet after that exciting win last night in overtime over the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah, finally been able to enjoy it. I've watched the game-winning goal on repeat most of the morning, and feeling pretty good. I wasn't sure we get a chance to talk again, Gil, but I'm glad we're here chatting about a Game 7 win for the Boston Bruins.
Let's start with this. Before the game, the coaching staff calling out David Pastrnak, and he is the one who ends up delivering the game-winning goal. Coincidence, or was he a little more inspired by that call out?
I mean, I think he was definitely ready to go. It's not that he had been bad in the opening 6 games of the series, but he hadn't put on a star performance or hadn't had kind of a defining moment. And had he not scored that game-winning goal, and if it had been Toronto who got it, I'm sure there would have been a ton of questions about his ability to elevate his game in the playoffs, fair or not. Full credit to the Maple Leafs. They had done a great job in games 5, 6, and 7 of suppressing Boston's offense. There was a point in game 7 where I wasn't even sure the Bruins were going to get one. There was so much talk about Joseph Woll being replaced by Ilya Samsonov prior to Game 7, and he played fantastic. The Bruins did not have one of the slow starts that had plagued them in the previous 2 games, getting a lot of shots on goal, and he was making those saves, Samsonov was. But that play in overtime, and so much credit needs to go to Hampus Lindholm for being aware of the fact that Pasta had an open lane. If you watch the replay, you can see him, holding his stick out saying, I have an opportunity here to get in behind the Leafs defense. And in a play that was reminiscent of the old Torrey Krug days, Lindholm threw it off the end boards just perfectly, and it came out right onto Pasternak's stick, and he was able to tuck it behind Samsonov. So that play doesn't happen without that awareness from Lindholm and kind of a picture-perfect pass off the boards. But you can see the relief on Pasta's face afterwards as well. There's a picture of team president Cam Neely going up there to congratulate him as well. And, yeah, the relief from him, the coaching staff, all the way up to the top of the organization and across the fan base was immediate, and you could just feel that joy from Pasta as well.
Got to talk about Jeremy Swayman. To me, the series MVP. What did you see from him, and how much did his play mean to the Boston Bruins?
Yeah, I've been talking about this all season long. I think I've mentioned it to you as well before, but the Bruins aren't even in the playoffs without the goaltending that they've gotten this season. That's been a huge reason why they were able to withstand this kind of transition season. You lose Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci down the middle. You need that strong defense, and you need that goaltending to be there. And Jeremy Swayman, in the 6 games that he played, was virtually unbeatable. He had an even .950 save percentage, which even just saying that out loud, it boggles my mind to think that he stopped 95% of all the shots faced in this series and off the sticks of some good players. Yes, William Nylander was out for the first 3 games. Austin Matthews missed a couple games, but the Leafs have more elite firepower than the Bruins. They have more finishers than the Bruins do. And the fact that Jeremy Swayman was able to keep them at bay, get in their heads, whatever. Even Linus Ullmark was good in the game that he started, but Austin Matthews had that game where he took over, scored on the breakaway. There was a moment in Game 7 where the Leafs had gone up 1-0, and they had an excellent opportunity to make it 2-0. Jeremy Swayman had a huge save there. That could have been the difference, but they were able to take it back the other way and score the game-tying goal like a minute and a half after the Leafs had scored. So that save right there was just typical of Jeremy Swayman, how he's elevated his play. And it's way too early to award a Conn Smythe trophy, but if you could name an MVP round by round, Jeremy Swayman would have to be in contention for that in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far.
Give me an unsung hero of this series for the Boston Bruins.
I mean, there's been early on, it was Jake DeBrusk stepped up. He had a few power play goals. Brad Marchand obviously had a very good series. There's a couple guys I think you need to look at. Brandon Carlo was arguably the Bruins' best defenseman in his own zone over this series. He is not a guy that jumps out on the scoreboard, but he was, I think, at least top 5 on the team in shots on goal as well. Without Brandon Carlo, and he's a guy that who has been injured in past playoff runs, and his absence has been noticeable, tangible. But he was a guy who stepped up. And then also on the blue line, Mason Lohrei came into the series later on. His confidence is just unbelievable, and you can tell that it extends to his teammates as well. I think Brad Marchand even compared him to a younger Brad Marchand in the playoffs back in 2011. Just a rookie who steps in, not afraid of anything, and he is a guy that I'm looking to in the lineup in the next series to keep that going and to, you need that freshness in the playoffs. A lot of these veterans are there for the Bruins. They've been around the block, but to have a guy who's come in kind of wide-eyed and just ready to accept the challenge, that extends to everybody as well, and gives everybody that extra push to realize that this is a unique opportunity every year in the playoffs.
So it doesn't get any easier. The Florida Panthers are next. What do you think are the key matchups for this series for the Bruins?
I mean, goaltending is obviously one. Sergei Bobrovsky was just named a Vezina Trophy finalist. He's been great all year. They're going to need continued strong play from Jeremy Swayman or Linus Ullmark if he gets an opportunity in there. It's going to be a tough series no matter what. And I think that's why you've seen the importance of a guy like Patrick Maroon coming into the lineup for the Bruins. He had an assist on the game-tying goal last night, and he is just so calm and cool out there, and will bring that physicality that the Bruins need in this series. Patrice Bergeron, like I mentioned before, he's not there anymore. Alexander Barkov is a Selke Trophy finalist. The Bruins really struggle in the faceoff dot in this series, so that matchup is going to be huge. The Bruins didn't get much offensively from Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha in this series. Those two guys are going to need to step up if the Bruins are going to have any chance of beating the Florida Panthers for sure.
The Bruins do not have home ice advantage in this series, and that came down to the last game of the regular season or so. How important is that as we head into this big matchup here?
I mean, they did win 2 of 3 against the Maple Leafs in the previous series. And, prior to last night, they had lost their last 3 Game 7s on home ice. So as much as the Bruins crowd fuels them, I think they're pretty comfortable as a road team. Chances are you're going to get a lot of black and gold in the arena down in Florida, just with, ticket availability and whatnot. I think you're still going to see a lot of support. Bruins fans travel really well. And so I don't think they're too concerned about not having home ice advantage. It's nice, but I think they're pretty comfortable on the road as well.
All right, Ian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
The podcast, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Boston Bruins. You can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins on X and Instagram primarily. And you can find me and my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren.
All right, Ian, thanks so much.
No problem, Gil. Thanks so much.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, John Chik. And John, Sunday, an emotional, hard-fought win, but a win nonetheless for the New York Rangers in Game 1.
Yeah, absolutely. One of those games where I think it's kind of setting the stage for what we're going to see throughout this series. Obviously, you got two incredibly talented teams, two teams that I don't really think have a ton of glaring weaknesses. And obviously, right before we hit record there, Gil, when the Canes scored with like a minute 45 left, my first reaction was, of course, nothing can be easy. I can't just enjoy the last few seconds ticking off here. We got to have a little bit of chaos at the end, but it is what it is, man. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. And when you've got two teams this good and with this many weapons, something like that can happen. And that's why you're up by 2 goals there and not 1, I suppose. They found a way to get it done. Wasn't perfect, but overall, I thought they played well, and hopefully they can just keep it rolling.
Mika Zibanejad coming up big. Actually, the star players came up big in this game for the Rangers. Talk about that and how important is it for them for the rest of the series?
It's huge. You'll eventually need, some of the complementary players to, chip in and get some goals. But cliche or not, this time of the year is when you need your best players to be your best players. And Mika Zibanejad was fantastic. Obviously, the 2 goals are really going to stick out. But, he was all over the ice, playing good defensive hockey, winning a couple of key faceoffs late in that game as well when the game is basically hanging in the balance. So, Mika, he went through a tough patch this year. He went about like 2 months, I think it was, without scoring an even strength goal. And he was hearing it from some of the fans. And I even talked about it too. We do need a little bit more from Mika, but the guy's a heck of a player, just a do-it-all center. He was there when they needed him in this game in every aspect of the game. And then Panarin, of course, he ends up with the game winner. And, he's kind of under a microscope this year because, the playoffs last year were just kind of a disaster for him. But he's obviously answered the bell, played a lot better. And the thing that I love about the Panarin goal, and I tweeted this out while the game was happening. You get the 2-on-1 there. The pass wasn't really there. The defenseman did a good job taking that pass away. I think in the pass, Panarin, because he is so selfless and he wants to set up his buddies for goals, he probably would have tried to force the pass anyway. But he's got such a lethal shot. You want him to use it more, and he has this year, and he did there. And, man, this game might still be going in overtime if that didn't happen because, they would have only been up 3-2, and maybe the Canes tie it late. But just great job by Panarin there, great job by Mika, and Igor was awesome too. So, yeah, the stars were definitely out in this game for the Rangers.
Special teams, a big part of this for the Rangers. Two power play goals, perfect on the PK. Both of these teams have excellent special teams. So talk a little bit about the importance of it for the rest of this series.
Yeah, Zach and I talked quite a bit about that in our, series preview episode edition. And, what can you say? 2 elite units. I think both teams were top 3 in both power play and penalty kill in the regular season. And it was nice to see the Rangers kind of get the jump on them. I don't know how many power plays the Canes ended up getting. It had to be at least like 5 or 6, I think. And the Rangers did a really nice job there, shutting it down. And then, of course, converting on the power play themselves and converting early in both power plays. The first one was, I think, 8 or 9 seconds. Second one was like 14 seconds. And the thing I love about the Ranger power play, I mean, there's a lot to like there, but they look about as creative and unpredictable as they've looked all season. They've had a great power play all season. At times, you get into kind of a little bit of a rut, though, where maybe you're trying to force a one-timer to Mika. Now, I mean, guys are moving all over the ice, and I've been watching them all season, and I'm not sure what they're about to do with the puck, like in a good way, though. They're that unpredictable and that creative right now that you can watch them all season, and it feels like they're showing some new looks and trying some different things, and obviously worked great against the Caps. They were great on the power play in that series, and solid start here for round 2 against the Canes.
You mentioned Igor Shesterkin. I mean, he struggled early in the season, came on really well later. How important is his play going to be? And what was the big difference between the slow start and the strong finish in his game?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought he started this season well. It was kind of like those middle months. I think December is when he got into his funk, and then January is when it got, pretty bad. The entire team at that time was not playing well in January, so that didn't help either. But, I think overall he just kind of found his confidence. He's trusting his instincts, and he just, you watch him go about his business in these playoff games, and it just seems like his head is in a really good place. He's not getting too high or too low. An example I used not too long ago was Game 3 against the Caps. Gave up a soft goal at the start of that game, shut them down the rest of the way. And in this game, he'll have better statistical games than this. But anybody that watched this game, I mean, he was doing his thing. And of course, the Ranger penalty kill was awesome. And you know what? A little bit of a cliche, but you need your goalie to be your best penalty killer. And I think he was. And the other thing, too, is he's really buckling down in clutch situations. And that's what the best goalies do. They give you those saves when you really, really need them. Obviously, got late in this game, minute 45 left. It's a 1-goal game, and he made a couple of saves down the stretch there as well. All the confidence in the world in Igor Shesterkin. You never know what can happen. Goalie is such a volatile position, but man, he looks good right now. And it's one of those things where if you're going to beat him, I mean, it's got to be like a second or third chance or like a crazy deflection. We saw the puck take a crazy bounce on the Canes' first goal of this game. It's tough to beat him clean right now, and that's obviously a good thing for the Rangers.
Talk to me about the keys to winning this series, because these are two very evenly matched teams on paper.
Yeah, so I think you can start with special teams. We touched on that a little bit, but when you've got two elite units like this, I think it's absolutely huge. And it's funny because, at times, Ranger fans and even just general hockey fans, they'll talk about the Rangers and not the best 5v5 team. I mean, I think that's overstated in the first place. But you know what? Take advantage of who you are. You have two elite special teams units. And the way I see it, the way this series unfolds, I have a hard time believing that the team that wins the special teams battle in this series will not then also win the series itself. So special teams are huge. I don't know why people kind of downplay those at times. It's not everybody, but, some people do that. I think, obviously, if the Rangers can get their star players, playing like they did in this game and shut down the Canes' big guys, I think that's going to be huge as well. Physicality battle is always important in the playoffs. I think the Rangers certainly held their own there. One thing I'm really hoping the Rangers can do going forward is stay out of the penalty box a little bit. They've kind of been playing with fire a little bit with that. And granted, there's some ticky-tack calls here and there, but I mean, there were some calls against the Rangers that clearly were penalties in this game as well. And, they did an awesome job killing them off. But again, you keep playing with fire and you keep giving a power play like the Canes more and more chances on the man advantage. Sooner or later, they're going to get one. So you hope it's not in a big spot. And again, you hope that, I'd love to see a game where the Rangers take just one or two penalties and, we'll see how that kind of a game shakes out, because I don't think they've done that yet. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward for sure.
What concerns you the most about facing the Carolina Hurricanes?
I mean, they're just a really good team. There's just no glaring weaknesses whatsoever. And, I know Freddie Anderson didn't play the whole season, but once he got back, he was awesome. And I think one of the only goalies in this league that can really go toe-to-toe with Igor. I mean, I'm Ranger biased, obviously. I'll take Igor against anybody. But Freddie Anderson's been a really good goalie in this league for a really long time. So there's that. I think certainly the Canes have a lot of very impressive depth. You look at their forwards, their defensemen are excellent. All six guys that they throw at you. So, yeah, I mean, they're just a really good team. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. But, overall, I like how the Rangers played in this game. It was awesome to see them, win the special teams battle and, deliver in crunch time. They were able to do that.
All right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so wherever you're watching this podcast or listening to it, Locked On Rangers is there as well. YouTube, any audio streaming platform you can possibly think of. And as far as where you can find me on social media, on Twitter at jchik17. I'm on there. Come say hi, give me a follow, all that good stuff, and go Rangers.
All right, John, thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you could team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards, and the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers that you could trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go to download it free now on Google Play or the App Store. Game on! And with Game On, I am happy to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On San Jose Sharks, J.D. Young. And tough season for the Sharks, but now hopefully that pays off. The draft lottery just a couple of days away. Talk to me about the Sharks' thoughts as we head into this big day for all the teams that did not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, as Bill Parcells once said, this is why you lift all those weights. This is why you lose all those games. Put yourself in the best possible position to get the first overall pick, and hopefully put yourself in a position to draft Macklin Celebrini, the wonder kid from Boston University, who has ties with the Sharks. He's a former junior Shark. His dad works for the Golden State Warriors. This is why you lose all the games. And while it's not going to solve all the problems for the Sharks, it's a huge piece, potentially grabbing Macklin Celebrini, who won the Hobie Baker as a 17-year-old. That's the crazy thing about him. He's 17. He doesn't even turn 18 until August, and playing against college players, most of them, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old guys. What Celebrini did and what he would potentially bring to the Sharks, it would be huge for a team that needs an continued influx of talent going forward.
So what about his skill set excites you and NHL scouts?
I think for him, it's his ability to play a two-way game, which I think is underrated, especially as a 17. Again, I cannot stress this enough. 17 years old kid. He maybe doesn't have the projection of, like a Connor Bedard from last year's draft, but I think he's going to be a 1C. Like, he is a bona fide 1C potential player who is going to make his teammates better. You see he has an amazing shot, but I think a very underrated aspect is his passing and his ability to kind of lift a line. And you saw that a lot at Boston University this season, where he would do a lot of work and then all of a sudden just make this nice little pass and find a wide open teammate all the way across the ice. He plays a physical game for a guy who's not overly big. He's 6 foot 190 right now. Not the biggest guy in the world, but you can see he's not scared to play a physical game. And as he adds some more, kind of muscle to his frame, I think he's going to continue to fill out there. But I think he's just going to be such an all around player that is able to, again, drive a line and make his line mates better, which is, again, the Sharks just need quality pieces right now.
If the Sharks don't win the lottery, I mean, they can only fall so far back in this process. Who are some of the other players they may be looking at if they don't get that ping pong ball coming up on Tuesday?
Yeah, so they Worst case scenario, they would fall to 3. That's if 2 other teams or jump them in the lottery. But if they are picking second or third, it'll be interesting to see what Mike Grier does there. The Sharks don't really have an answer for like that number 1 defenseman in the pipeline. Shakir McMillan had a really nice season in the AHL, but I don't know if he's like a team's their one kind of number 1 defenseman going forward. But this draft has a lot of questions at defense. Like everybody kind of has a skill set. You kind of like it, and you have some holes that they need to kind of work on. So I could see them potentially going with whoever they think is the best defenseman in the draft. You of course have Ivan Demidov, who has been tearing it up in the MHL, which is kind of the Russian juniors. But there's always the Russian factor with him. Will his game translate? Is it kind of another question too, as he's very, very spectacular with the puck. But again, there's always those questions. How else can he kind of help out? I could also see him going with a player like Caden Lindstrom, who's a 6'5", almost kind of the Quentin Byfield type model where you can see very, very raw. He's going to need some years, but once he kind of hits that ceiling, like you're getting a one of a kind type of player. So the Sharks, if they don't win the lottery, there's still plenty of amazing options for the Sharks to add to their draft pipeline with that either second or third pick as a worst case scenario. So I know it's not as exciting as last year's draft when you had like Leo Carlson and Fantilli and Will Smith and Connor Bedard, but this year's draft is still very, very good at the top. It's just, I think, a little bit more, it just depends on what you're looking for.
One thing that the Sharks are still looking for is a new head coach. Talk to me about, what are they looking for in a coach, and maybe some candidates that you think they might be looking at?
That's the big question for San Jose, is what type of coach. Mike Grier, in his last kind of press availability, said they're going to be pretty open and have a pretty thorough search in their as they look for a new head coach. If I had to kind of put odds on it, I think Ryan Warsofsky is probably their front runner right now, the Sharks assistant coach. He was won the Calder Cup with the Chicago Wolves a couple years ago, interviewed for this position 2 years ago when David Quinn got the job, but got a position on the staff. Known for his development, his ability to work with younger guys. I could see them, if they wanted to go that route, we'll need to be able to kind of grow with this young group of players. David Carl has been thrown around, the University of Denver head coach, who's just been having an amazing program there. If he wanted to make the jump to the pros, that could be a potential. I've heard Todd McLellan. There is going to be a wide net, I think, for Mike Grier. And we've seen he's going to try to make sure that he gets the right person in here. And I don't think he's really too worried about timelines. I also wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe kind of waiting to see what happens with the draft lottery, because if you could dangle the potential Macklin Celebrini coming to your team, and then Will Smith signs your ELC, kind of makes the job a little bit more, I think, enticing for a coach, knowing you have two guys, a potential number 1 overall pick and a potential number 4 overall pick joining your team. I think brings a little bit more energy to the team. But I don't expect this decision to happen anytime soon. I think this could be a long, drawn out thing that we're maybe looking at the end of May, beginning of June, to be honest, before we have a candidate decided.
One of the things that general managers usually do when they're looking for a new coach, they hire a guy who's the opposite of the guy they just let go. So using that criteria, how would you describe, who that would be coaching wise?
I know that's always like the dating thing, right? You date a blonde, you got to date a brunette, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you find somebody else. I actually think they probably going to try to find someone who's continues to be a player's coach and is that whole development coach. I know David Quinn, he coming from the college program, put into a very tough situation this year, right? But it kind of seemed like maybe his system didn't fit the players, and you saw that as the ice, the team kind of on the ice this year was one of the worst team in the NHL, one of the worst teams when it came to goal differential that we've seen in the modern hockey. But I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they do kind of go a bit younger, looking for a coach, again, who can grow with this group, who's going to be a very young group again, right? You're going to have William Eklund, Fabian Zerlin. Mario Ferraro is kind of going to be like the old guy at the ripe age of 25, 26. And, you do have some veterans like Mikael Granlund and Mark-Edward Vlasic, but the core of this team is going to be very, very young again. I expect to find a coach who can kind of help these young guys grow and develop and kind of hit their ceiling.
Any other big moves or targets for this team position-wise to get better for next season?
I think Mike Grier is going to continue to let this thing kind of happen naturally, right? They're doing a good job of clearing up their books with some of the trades that they've made. They're still going to be going through a little bit of that pain this year with some of the dead money that's on the cap, but I think they're going to be somewhat active in free agency to try to add some guys who can help, again, mentor some of these young guys. But I don't see them big game hunting this year. I don't see them going for like a Sam Reinhart or I know the Mitch Marner trade sounds really fun if that potentially happens. But I think, though, with Grier, he knows another year of kind of pain with hope to see a little bit of building off of last year. And then next year, that 25-26 season, when you can really maybe start to kind of make a jump. So again, I plug in some holes here, finding some guys, but I don't think they're going to try to slow down the progress of their prospects who are going to be starting to hit the Sharks here really soon.
All right, JD, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find the podcast and where they can find you on social media?
Of course, you can find the podcast wherever you get podcasts and watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole.
All right, JD, thanks so much. Always a pleasure, and good luck to the Sharks at the Draft Lottery.
Thanks, Gil.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I want to thank my guests, Ian McLaren of Locked On Boston Bruins. I want to thank John Chik of Locked On New York Rangers and JD Young of Locked On Sharks for joining me today. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we are here at Locked On NHL every weekday, Monday through Friday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the league. So make sure you subscribe and join us for that. Until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.